My mother laughed and shamed me in front of the entire family. What I didn't know was that her cruelty was hiding something far darker. By the time I uncovered the truth, she'd stolen everything from me. My name is Madison, and I need to tell you about the day my life shattered into a million pieces, and how I put it back together, one painful truth at a time. It was Thanksgiving 2023. I was 28 years old, sitting at my family's dining table, surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who mattered in my small world. The turkey was perfect, the wine was flowing, and for a brief moment, I actually believed things might be okay. I should have known better. My mother, Patricia, sat at the head of the table like a queen surveying her kingdom. She'd always had this way of commanding a room, confident, sharp-tongued, the kind of woman who could make you feel 2 inches tall with just a look. But she was my mom, and despite everything, I'd spent my entire life trying to earn her approval. "Madison," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter, "tell everyone about your little business venture." My stomach dropped. The way she said "little" made it sound like a child's lemonade stand, not the graphic design company I'd been pouring my heart into for 3 years. "It's going well," I said quietly, forcing a smile. "I just landed a contract with—" "Going well." Patricia laughed, this sharp, cruel sound that made everyone stop eating. "Sweetheart, let's be honest. You're barely scraping by. I saw your bank statements." The room went silent. My face burned. "Mom, you went through my bank statements? I'm your mother. I have access to your accounts, remember? You asked me to help you set them up when you were in college." She waved her hand dismissively. "Anyway, I was just telling your Aunt Carol before dinner. Madison's still living like a struggling artist at 28. It's embarrassing, really." My cousin Derek snorted. My uncle looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "And my mother." She was smiling, enjoying every second of my humiliation. "Maybe if you'd listened to me and gone to medical school like I suggested," she continued, "you wouldn't be in this position. But no, you had to be creative." She said the word like it tasted bad. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there, tears burning behind my eyes, while my entire family watched me crumble. That was the moment I realized something had to change. But I had no idea how deep my mother's betrayal actually ran. The weeks after Thanksgiving were torture. I couldn't stop replaying that dinner in my mind. My mother's laughter, the pitying looks from my relatives, the crushing shame that made it hard to breathe. But something else bothered me too. What Patricia had said about seeing my bank statements. Yes, she had access to my accounts. She'd helped me set them up years ago. But why was she checking them? And more importantly, why did she seem to know so much about my finances when I'd been deliberately vague with her for months? I decided to do some digging. It started small. I requested detailed statements from my bank, going back 2 years. What I found made my blood run cold. Transfers. Dozens of them. Small amounts at first. $200 here, $300 there. But over time, they got bigger. $1,000. $2,500. $5,000. All going to an account I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I traced the pattern. The transfers always happened on the same day each month, like clockwork. And they'd been going on for over 18 months. Someone had been systematically draining my accounts, and they had complete access to do it. I called the bank, my voice barely steady. "I need to know who owns account number 4729-8834-2156. The representative hesitated. "Ma'am, I can't disclose that information without proper authorization. Those are my funds being transferred to that account. Please. I need to know." After what felt like an eternity, she came back on the line. "The account is registered to Patricia and Chen." "Is that—" I hung up. My mother. My own mother had been stealing from me for a year and a half. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my laptop and started going through everything, every statement, every transaction, every cent. By the time the sun set, I'd calculated the total, $47,000. She'd stolen $47,000 from me. $47,000 that could have saved my business. That could have paid for the therapy I desperately needed. That could have given me the breathing room to actually build the life I wanted. Instead, it had gone straight into Patricia's pocket. And she'd had the audacity to mock me for struggling financially, when she was the reason I was struggling in the first place. I didn't confront her immediately. I wish I could say it was because I was being strategic, gathering evidence, preparing for battle. But the truth is, I was terrified. This was my mother. The woman who raised me, who I'd spent my whole life trying to please. How do you accuse your own mother of theft? How do you accept that level of betrayal? But I couldn't pretend I didn't know. So 2 days later, I drove to her house, the beautiful 4-bedroom colonial she'd bought 3 years ago. The one she said she'd saved for years to afford. Now I knew the truth. She'd saved for it, all right, with my money. Patricia opened the door with that same confident smile. Madison, what a surprise. I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Of course, honey. Come in. I just made coffee. We sat in her pristine living room, white couches, expensive art on the walls, everything perfect and curated. It all felt like a lie now. I know what you've been doing, I said. Her smile didn't waver. What do you mean? The transfers. From my account to yours. $47,000, Mom. You've stolen $47,000 from me. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. But then she laughed, that same cruel laugh from Thanksgiving, and my entire body went cold. Stolen? Madison, don't be dramatic. That money was just sitting there. You clearly weren't using it effectively. I thought of it as borrowing, an investment in my future, which, let's be honest, you weren't going to manage properly anyway. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. You stole from me and you're justifying it? I gave you life. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. Don't you think I'm entitled to a little compensation? She leaned back, completely relaxed. Besides, what are you going to do about it? Call the police on your own mother? Ruin the family. The confidence in her voice made me sick. She thought she'd won. She thought I was too weak, too desperate for her approval, to fight back. She was wrong. I want every cent back, I said, standing up. Within 30 days, or I'm pressing charges. Patricia's laugh followed me all the way to my car. I drove straight to a lawyer's office. Mark Patterson, a criminal defense attorney my college roommate had recommended. I told him everything, showed him the bank statements, explained the transfers. He listened carefully, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Madison, this is textbook financial exploitation. The fact that she had authorized access to your accounts complicates things, but the pattern of behavior, the amounts, the timeline, this is prosecutable. But I need to be honest with you. Taking legal action against a parent is emotionally brutal. Are you sure you're ready for this? I thought about Thanksgiving, about Patricia's laughter, about the years I'd spent feeling worthless, incompetent, never quite good enough, while she systematically stole from me. I'm ready. We spent the next 2 weeks building the case. Mark subpoenaed additional bank records, documented every transfer, established the timeline. But he also suggested something else, gathering evidence of Patricia's pattern of emotional abuse and manipulation. Financial exploitation rarely happens in isolation, he explained. If we can establish a pattern of control and abuse, it strengthens your case significantly. So I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I started documenting everything. Every phone call with my mother, every interaction, every cruel comment. I reached out to old friends, former co-workers, anyone who might have witnessed her behavior over the years. What I discovered broke my heart. I wasn't the only victim. My mother had a history of financial manipulation, small loans from friends that were never repaid, questionable business dealings, a pattern of using people and discarding them. She'd just hidden it well behind her polished exterior. But there was something else. Something that made everything click into place. 3 years ago, Patricia had gone through a nasty divorce from my stepfather. As part of the settlement, she was supposed to split their joint assets 50-50. But according to court records Mark obtained, she'd hidden significant assets, including the money she'd stolen from me. She hadn't just stolen from me to fund her lifestyle. She'd stolen from me to hide money from her divorce settlement. I was part of her scheme to defraud her ex-husband. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated, I could barely function for days. The breaking point came 6 weeks after my initial confrontation with Patricia. I received a text from my cousin Derek, "Your mom's having a Christmas party next week. She specifically said to tell you not to come. Said you've been causing drama, and she doesn't need the negativity." I stared at the message, fury rising in my chest. She was going to paint me as the villain. She was going to turn the entire family against me while she played the victim. Not this time. I called Mark immediately. "I want to file charges. Now." 2 days before Patricia's Christmas party, the police showed up at her door with a warrant for her arrest. The charges: theft, financial exploitation of a family member, and fraud. Mark had built an airtight case, and the district attorney was eager to prosecute. Patricia was arrested, processed, and released on bail. By the time of her precious Christmas party, everyone in the family knew what she'd done. But she still held the party. Because Patricia was nothing if not committed to her performance. I showed up uninvited. When I walked through the door, the room went silent. My mother stood by the fireplace, glass of wine in hand, her face a mask of fury barely contained beneath a fake smile. "Madison, what a surprise. Is it?" I walked further into the room, aware that every single family member was watching. "I think we need to have a family conversation about the $47,000 you stole from me." "That's a lie," Patricia said immediately, her voice sharp. "Madison's been struggling with some mental health issues lately. Making accusations, causing problems. I've been trying to help her, but—" "I have bank statements," I interrupted, pulling out a folder. 18 months of transfers from my account to yours. Want to explain that to everyone." The room erupted. Aunts and uncles talking over each other, my grandmother demanding to know what was happening, Patricia's face going from red to white and back again. "You had access to my accounts," she sputtered. They were loans you authorized." "Really? So why did you tell Detective Morrison that you borrowed the money without my knowledge?" I pulled out another document. "This is the police report from your arrest last week. It's all documented." My mother's carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time, and I watched it happen with a cold satisfaction that surprised me. The next 3 months were a nightmare. Patricia hired an expensive lawyer and fought the charges with everything she had. She tried to claim I'd given her permission for the transfers. She tried to paint me as vindictive and unstable. She even attempted to sue me for defamation. But Mark was prepared for all of it. We had documentation, witnesses, expert testimony about patterns of financial abuse. The case against her was solid. During this time, Patricia ramped up her emotional attacks. She called me constantly, leaving voicemails that alternated between tearful pleas and venomous threats. "You're destroying this family. No mother should have to endure this from their own child." You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Everyone knows what you really are: ungrateful, spiteful, cruel. I saved every voicemail, added them to the evidence file. Each cruel word became ammunition for the case against her. But it wasn't just the legal battle that was destroying me. It was the family fallout. My grandmother stopped speaking to me. Two of my aunts sided with Patricia, claiming I was being vindictive. My cousin Derek started spreading rumors that I was mentally ill, making everything up for attention. Only a handful of family members supported me, and they did so quietly, afraid of Patricia's wrath. There were nights I questioned everything. Nights I wondered if she was right, if I was destroying the family over money, if I should just let it go and move on. But then I'd remember Thanksgiving. Her laughter. The years of feeling worthless. The systematic theft. The calculated betrayal. And I'd remember why I was doing this. The trial began in late March. The courthouse was cold and sterile, nothing like the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV. Patricia sat at the defense table with her lawyer, perfectly composed, wearing a modest dress that made her look like somebody's sweet grandmother. I knew better. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. Bank statements, transfer records, timestamps, expert testimony from financial analysts. They showed how Patricia had systematically drained my accounts over 18 months, how she'd hidden the money during her divorce, how she'd lied to investigators. When it was the defense's turn, Patricia's lawyer tried everything. They argued that I'd been aware of the transfers and hadn't objected. They brought in a psychologist who testified about my supposed unstable mental state. They painted me as a vindictive daughter trying to punish her mother over family disagreements. But then Mark called me to the stand. I'd been terrified of this moment. Terrified I'd freeze up, break down, prove Patricia right about my weakness. But when I sat in that witness box and looked at my mother, really looked at her, something shifted inside me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. Ms. Chen, Mark began gently, can you describe your relationship with your mother before you discovered the theft? I took a deep breath. I spent my entire life trying to earn her approval. Nothing I did was ever good enough. I wasn't successful enough, smart enough, ambitious enough. She made me feel worthless. And I believed her. When did that change? When I realized she'd been stealing from me while actively mocking me for struggling financially. When I understood that my pain, my stress, my feeling of failure, she'd manufactured all of it while profiting from it. The courtroom was silent. Ms. Chen, in your own words, how has your mother's theft and manipulation affected you? And I told them. All of it. The years of therapy I couldn't afford because she'd stolen the money for it. The business opportunities I'd missed because I didn't have capital that was sitting in her account. The nights I'd gone to bed feeling like a failure, never knowing she was the one sabotaging me. By the time I finished, several jurors were wiping their eyes. Patricia's lawyer tried to break me during cross-examination. She questioned my memory, my motives, my character. She implied I was lying, exaggerating, playing the victim. But I didn't break. For the first time in my life, I stood up to my mother's proxy and didn't back down. The defense's case fell apart when Mark called Patricia to the stand. Under oath, she had to answer questions she'd been dodging for months. Ms. Patricia Chen, did you transfer money from your daughter's account to your own without her explicit permission? I had access to the account. It was a joint account arrangement. That's not what I asked. Did you take money without her explicit permission? Madison was wasting money. She wasn't financially responsible. I was protecting her. By taking $47,000 for yourself? It was complicated. Did you use any of that money to purchase your current home? Patricia hesitated. And in that hesitation, everyone saw the truth. I used my savings to. Ms. Chen, I have records showing that prior to these transfers, your savings account had less than $8,000. 3 months after the transfers began, you made a down payment of $60,000 on your house. Where did that additional money come from? Silence. Ms. Chen. I may have borrowed some from Madison. Without her knowledge? She would have said yes if I'd asked. But you didn't ask, did you? She owed me. Patricia suddenly shouted, her composure finally cracking. I raised her. I sacrificed everything. She owed me that money. The courtroom erupted. The judge had to call for order. And I watched my mother, the woman who'd controlled me my entire life through fear and manipulation, completely lose control. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. During that time, I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, Mark beside me, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold my coffee cup. When they called us back in, I couldn't breathe. The jury foreman stood up. In the case of the state versus Patricia and Chen, on the charge of theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of financial exploitation, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. I heard the words, but they didn't feel real. Guilty. 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 Patricia made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Her lawyer immediately began arguing for leniency, citing her age, her clean record, her role as a mother. But the judge wasn't buying it. Ms. Chen, the judge said, her voice stern, you engaged in a calculated, systematic pattern of financial abuse against your own daughter. You stole from her, you manipulated her, and when confronted, you attempted to gaslight her and destroy her credibility. This court takes such violations of trust extremely seriously. She sentenced Patricia to 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution of the stolen funds plus damages, a total of $89,000. My mother was led away in handcuffs, still protesting, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. And I sat there, tears streaming down my face, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Free. The aftermath was complicated. Half my family still won't speak to me, convinced I destroyed our family over money. The other half has slowly reached out, some apologizing, others just trying to reconnect without acknowledging what happened. I don't have room for people who stood by and watched me get abused. My new family is smaller, but it's real. Patricia served 18 months before being released on parole. I haven't spoken to her since the trial. She sent letters, some apologetic, some still insisting she was right, but I don't read them. My therapist holds on to them in case I ever want to, but I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. The restitution money allowed me to rebuild my business. I hired 2 employees, moved into a real office space, started taking on bigger clients. Last month, I signed a contract worth more than everything Patricia stole from me combined. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was learning that I'm not worthless. I'm not incompetent. I'm not a failure. I was being sabotaged by someone who was supposed to love and protect me. Understanding that changed everything. I think about Thanksgiving sometimes. About sitting at that table, feeling small and ashamed while my mother laughed at me. How that moment was the beginning of my unraveling, but also my awakening. If she hadn't humiliated me that day, I might never have looked into my finances. I might never have discovered the theft. I might have spent years more under her control, believing her lies about who I was and what I was capable of. Her cruelty freed me, and I built something beautiful from the wreckage. People ask me sometimes if I regret pressing charges against my own mother, if I feel guilty for destroying the family, if I wish I'd just let it go. And my answer is always the same. I didn't destroy anything. Patricia did that all on her own. I just refused to be destroyed along with it. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over someone else's comfort, someone else's approval, someone else's lies. And I would make that choice again. Every single time. Today, I'm 30 years old. I run a successful business. I have real friends, a therapist who's helped me rebuild my sense of self, and a life that's finally truly mine. My mother's laughter doesn't echo in my head anymore. The shame from that Thanksgiving dinner has faded into something else, a reminder of how far I've come, how strong I had to become. Justice isn't always satisfying. It doesn't erase the years of pain or the betrayal. But it does give you back your power. It lets you say, what happened to me was wrong, and I deserve better. I deserved better than a mother who stole from me. I deserved better than a family that watched it happen. I deserved better than a lifetime of being made to feel small. And I finally gave myself what I deserved. Not through her approval, not through family acceptance, but through my own strength and courage to stand up and say, enough. That's my story. The story of how my own mother laughed and shamed me in front of the entire family, and how that moment of cruelty became the beginning of my freedom. I'm Madison, and I survived.